Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Lenka, and I'm not a gamer. I know. It's not like I have never played a game, but most of the time I actually find better things to do with my life than play games. Please don't kick me out. As Rune said yesterday, I am also one of the people who find it fascinating to watch what games do to people. So even though I don't play games myself, I can see the potential games bring to learning. And that's what I will be talking about today. And how did this happen that this weird linguist ended up doing games? Well, one day there was a PhD student from Germany visiting our department on a very unrelated project. And when we were talking over a cup of coffee, he said, "You know what? I have this supervisor. He's this kind of crazy professor. And he made this game where he locks his students up in his office and forces them to learn linguistics." And that's when I got hooked. I asked this PhD student to show me the game, and we spent the rest of our break with me being completely sucked in and fascinated. And I couldn't let go of his computer because at that point, that game was only on their internal LMS. So he couldn't let me have the game. I could only play it on his computer. So I was stalking him for the rest of his stay, trying to borrow his computer so I can escape from this crazy professor's office. Because the game he was talking about was a digital escape room. And the crazy professor is Rolf Kreyer, who is the co-author of this paper. I think he's on Twitch, so I hope he will not kill me for calling him crazy 3 times. So after this PhD student went home, I decided to write an email to Rolf and ask him if he could please teach me how to do this, because I was completely fascinated. And then we wrote a small project together to fund his stay so he could come to IA and teach me how to do this. But then COVID hit. So we ended up just doing this on Zoom. He coached me and I could record it, which was actually quite useful. And he taught me how to create digital escape rooms. And that's what this talk is about, because this kind of spinned after that. We wrote another project, and now we have an Erasmus Plus founded project developing learning games. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But before we get there, I would want to tell you about our experience with creating digital escape rooms for learning in university, for university courses. So I will talk about what was our problem, what we tried to fix with the game, how we implemented, how we developed this game, and what are our findings. And then towards the end, about our current project and what is our way forward. So first, the problem. As most of you, if you teach in any context, would know, there is a difference between what the teacher expects of the students and what the students expect of the course very often. So what I would expect of my student would be that they would come prepared to class. I would expect them to read the materials I assigned to be read before the class, actually before the class. I would expect them to participate actively, raise their hands, answer my questions, discuss with their colleagues, and I would expect them to invest their own learning because they enrolled in this course for a reason. They probably want to learn what I'm trying to teach them, so they should have internal motivation to spend time on the materials on their own time. However, for those of you who are familiar with our other campus, as you see, students always find a different way, not the way they are expected to take. So this is taken from the 7th floor of one of our buildings, and no matter what we do, no matter how many flower pots we put along that path, no matter how much tape we put there to stop students going there, this path is always there. It recreates itself every fall semester after they have replanted the grass during the summer. So what students do, and in this case I say English students because those are the students I meet, they think that they can already speak English, so this is going to be an easy ride. They don't need to do anything. If they just come to class, I will somehow transfer the knowledge into their heads without them doing anything. And they do not expect to do anything outside of the class. They feel like they spend so much time at the university, that should be their study time. And they think that they could surely just talk themselves out of it. The secret is they can't. They do very poorly if this is their attitude. So what games bring here? Why do we think that we can not necessarily fix this, but improve this with games? Well, the value of games in education, and here I put serious games because that's what we do in this specific project, but this could also be transferred to other games used in an educational context, is that if they are used correctly, if they are good games, they should increase the willingness to invest time in the learning process. So if the game is engaging, it increases the willingness to spend time on the game. And if the game facilitates learning, that's also spend time on the learning process. They can also help conceptualize, concretize abstract concepts, especially in the case of specifically designed games to go with the learning of the given course. And they can increase intrinsic motivation. As most of you probably are gamers or play games, you know that when you get sucked in, you are sucked in, and you just keep playing for the playing's sake because it motivates you to play. So we would like the students to be motivated by learning. We don't want to ask them, you need to learn this, or you need to read this because otherwise I will be mad at you, or otherwise you will fail the course. We want them to learn because they find it intrinsically motivating. They want to learn because they want to learn. And then in our case, we want them to be able to apply the knowledge we otherwise lecture about or they read about in the books in the game. So we design games that facilitate the application of the abstract linguistic knowledge, in this case, to the progress in the game. So what we have done, what is the proposed solution to our problem of students not engaging with our material, is to create tailored or self-developed learning game or games which are used specifically as learning tools. And the goals reflect the findings from the research which I just mentioned. We want them to have increased internal motivation. We want them to spend more time with our course materials. We want them to feel accomplishment. We want them to feel engaged. And we also want to develop them as learners, because in games, very often you develop general problem-solving skills. You learn the game, and by learning the game, you perhaps Google things, you ask other people, you become much more independent learner than you were before, hopefully. And how can we do this? How can we, two linguistics researchers, create a game that would do all this? Again, as I'm talking to the audience I'm talking to, you are probably familiar with the flow. So ideally, a good game should hit the sweet spot between being too complex and too frustrating that the players will just walk away, and between too simple that they would be bored. So if we can figure out how to stay in the flow, then our game should work. But with learning games, you also have the problem of the proverbial chocolate-covered broccoli. Is our game just a mockery of real game? Is it a mockery of engagement or intrinsic motivation? So we are aware of this. We are aware of how difficult it is to strike a balance between these two. And there are some specific steps we have taken to hit the flow channel. In the game, and these are screenshots from Rolf's game, in the game we try to provide opportunities to close knowledge gaps without leaving the immersion. So in this game you can find an iPad which you can pick up, and in the iPad you have lecture notes from Rolf's course. And you have hints how to approach the escape room. If I had a pointer, I would point on the top from your point right corner. You can choose either the lecture notes, where you can find the answers to the tasks, or you cannot really find answers, but you can find the theory behind the tasks, so you can learn how to solve the tasks. Or you can hit the lower one, which is escape room hints how to work in this escape room. We also provide clear objectives, or we try to, and these are often color-coded. So you can see that there is this mathematical equation, as an example, which is in red, green, and blue, and then you can find red, green, and blue points in the room, which by logic should lead you to use these points to solve the equation. And now I don't remember who I talked about yesterday, but this is sometimes not as clear to the players as it is to us when we develop this. So this is something that needs to be taken into consideration. Is this game self-learnable, or do we need some more instructions how the players can succeed? We also try to provide a world with clear challenges. This first screenshot on the left is from an earlier version of the game where there was just a printer. And if you pay enough attention, you would see that you should click on it because your cursor would change when you hover above it. But it's not that obvious. In the new version of the game, the printer has a little piece of paper sticking out of it. So you can see that there is something stuck in there and you need to figure out how to get it out. And then the games give you, provide a world where you get immediate feedback. When you do something correctly, there is a sound or there is a change. If you do it incorrectly, there is again a sound or some change in the environment. Here you see on the first two pictures on the left, when you do the thing you are supposed to do, a door appears. So there was a hidden door there, and it appears when you do what you were supposed to do. And then there is a puzzle on the door, and as soon as you solve the puzzle, there is a red line that goes and grows and opens the lock. So there are places in the game where you get immediate feedback on your learning. So from the point of the players, they get immediate feedback on their actions. From our point of view as teachers, they get immediate feedback on the correctness or incorrectness of their answers. Now, how we made this, bear in mind that we are linguistics lecturers. We are no programmers, we are no game developers. Rolf is an avid gamer, I am not, but we still managed to create this from scratch. It's a point-and-click adventure game, which is a virtual copy of the instructor's office or offices. Rolf has an entire department. And we created it using something called Active Presenter, which is a slide-based interactive e-learning authoring software. It has a free version and a paid version, but the free version is fairly usable for this kind of thing. It also allows JavaScripting, and it exports to HTML and SCORM. HTML, you can put it on any web page, and SCORM is very useful for several LMS systems. So Canvas has an integration for SCORM, so I can put my escape room into Canvas and use it as an assignment in my course because it works there and it gives points and I can track the students' progress. The overt goal, what we tell the students, is that we want them to escape from our locked offices by solving the tasks in there. However, our covered goal, what we really want them to do, is to interact with our materials. For my part, I don't care whether they manage to win the game or not. I want them to spend time with the linguistics tasks, which is otherwise very difficult to make them do before, like 3 days before the exam. And now a little bit about the games themselves. So this game, this is a screenshot from Rolf's game, and as far as I know, Tobias will make the slides available later, so you can click on the link and test it if you want. And in the linguists layer, there are several rooms which are devoted to different subfields of linguistics. So you have the phonetics room, the pragmatics room, the syntax room, and so on. And there are also some general attention or logical tasks. There is an integrated cheat book with lecture notes and hints, as I already showed you. And Rolf uses this game for students in English linguistic courses in the BA in Anglophone Studies and TFL. TFL is Teaching English as a Foreign Language, for those of you who don't know. Students can basically learn anything covered in his course from this game and the cheat book. So if someone gets really eager, they can get hold of this in January, let's say, and then work their way through the rooms and learn what they need to learn. And the trial results that you will see, there were surveys distributed to 34 of these students. And what they say is then they spend approximately, you see median, 2 hours working on this room. The arithmetic average was almost actually a little over 3 hours. but that's probably because of the very eager student there with the maximum of 800 minutes. They quite liked the game. All of them said it was either excellent or good, and the game behaved as it should. So it works as a game for the students, even though it's really self-made with no additional developer in there. Rolf made all the graphics, all the sounds, everything by himself, just using Google and the support for the software. When we asked the students a little more about the riddles, they agreed that they were interesting most of the time. And you see some of the free comment answers. Some of them loved it. Some of them said that, oh, after the third room, I have kind of figured it out. And it was both good and bad because it was all the same after that, but the tasks were different, so there was a little help. They basically showed that they learned the game mechanics and then it was easier. But one of the comments, again, I would like to have a pointer, but second to last line says that if we spend too long on a session, the game stopped feeling like a game, but more like you built your own homework assignment kit. So here you see the chocolate-covered broccoli. We are there. It's not like we have something perfect that will solve all our problems. We have a game or several games that work for very many people, but some people will see the broccoli there. Now, the overall assessment of the game, most of them think that it was an excellent addition to lecture, and most of them think that it was useful additional practice. And this is what we wanted to achieve. We wanted them to spend time on the materials and use this for own learning. Now, a little bit about my game, which was modeled after the early version of Rolf's game. It's less complex. It basically just covers one of my courses. So I teach a course of English linguistics for teacher students, and this game is designed to practice that. So I have had 3 different versions. In the final version, which I am currently using, the target group are introductory English linguistics students, and there are 7 linguistics tasks related to that specific exam. So this is my take on this, that I put in tasks that are specifically related to their exam that semester. And there are also some general attention and logical tasks, and they must do this room in order to get their credit check. So they have to try to escape from the room to be able to take the exam. When they do manage to escape, they get key to the last year's exam. So there is an added bonus. I have tested the game in different conditions. I have used it as a revision tool. I have used it as an assignment where they get credit for taking it, as individual or group task, homework, or in-class activity. And then I have distributed surveys after all trials and managed to squeeze answers out of 89 students over the 3 years. And what I found is that in trial 1, where I gave them the option to use the room, it was a practice before the exam, but I did not make it obligatory. No one escaped from the room. Everybody failed, and most students gave up within 1 hour. However, when I made it obligatory, when I said you have to escape, otherwise you cannot take the exam, then most of the students managed to escape. How is that? Well, they spent 3 hours. That was the difference. When it was not obligatory, they spent less than 1 hour, didn't figure it out right away, gave up. When I forced them to do it, then they spent more than 3 hours, and most of them escaped. And just so you know, I did not fail them because of that. Those who did not escape got a paper assignment with the same tasks, but without the gaming aspect of it. And then they were able to solve them. However, I gave them the option of working in groups or individually, and most of them liked working in groups. However, there was a lot of illicit communication. So I gave them the option, you can work in groups, you can communicate with your group, but when I asked them anonymously afterwards, did you communicate with other groups? 89% of them said yes, we communicated with other people. When they worked individually, also more than 2/3 said that they communicated with other people even though they were not supposed to. Then in trial 3, I made this obligatory revision task done in class where I was the game master. So I was walking around and I was the one who they could ask. So instead of making this into kind of strict testing environment, I try to make it a cooperative task. And here again, most of the students managed to escape, and most of them spend between 2 and 4 hours. We had 4 hours for this in class, so most of them spent either 2 to 3 hours or 3 plus, which means 3 to 4 in most cases. And what did they say? They said that it was difficult, which was my goal. I didn't want it to be easy because then it's not learning. And most of them said it was clumsy but playable. And again, bear in mind, I'm no game developer, I'm no programmer. I was doing this by Googling lots of stuff and rewatching the tutorial Rolf gave me. Overall experience was fairly positive. Many students enjoyed the game, and many also said that they enjoyed the game, but they didn't like the fact that it was high stakes, that it was an assignment. When they played in class, where they needed hints or they got the hints from me, these hints were never correct answers. So I kind of went into this Socratic way that I kept asking them questions to lead them to the correct way of thinking. I never gave them the answers. And then I asked them whether they believe that games should be used in higher education. And as you see, most of them were very positive to that. 62% were positive to use gaming in learning situations, and 32% both for learning and assessment. So here is the summary of all 3 trials. The first graph, learning only, see trial 1, trial 2, trial 3, and both learning assessment. So you see that more than half in all trials are positive to using it for learning, and about 30% for learning and assessment. So my conclusion from this is, what is the value of games in teaching? They increase the feeling of accomplishment. Students experience mastery, which is very important for motivation to keep learning. They develop their problem-solving skills and hopefully some search before you ask strategies. When I give them the escape room, they often just sit there and they don't know what to do. And then I ask them, well, did you look into the book? Oh, I can look into the book. Oh, I didn't know that. Did you try to Google this? Oh, that's a good idea. And I don't understand how can students in the 21st century not try to Google first? Why do they just sit there and stare at me instead of Googling it? So I try to encourage them, just Google it. What's stopping you? Oh, I didn't know I can do that. How come? How come you don't know you can do that? So this is what I try to do with them. And it very clearly increases the time they spend on the task. When I tried to use the escape rooms for assessment, that did not go very well because of the illicit communication. However, I see that the time on task is increased only if the students think that they are being assessed. So if I give them this for their own practice, they don't spend time on it. But if they think they are being assessed, then they invest the time. So how I use it now after the 3 trials is that I tell them they are being assessed, but in fact, I really just want them to spend time on the materials. And this is just a quote from one student, not representative, just one student came to me after the class, and this is a direct translation from Norwegian, so it's a little bit clumsy, but he said, "It took me a long time to get out of there, but I have never before felt that kind of accomplishment as when I finished." And that was what I was going for. He has these like stars in his eyes, and he was so excited that it was so much fun because it was very frustrating, but when he finally got there, it was the rush of endorphins and everything. And that's what we get when we win the game, right? That's what gamers experience. So what did we take out of this? What did we do after we have created these rooms? And this is mainly Rolf's work here. He created an active presenter-based tool template where he put all the little nitty-gritty things he have created in this room into a pre-built JavaScript code, which is already in there. So instead of having to know a little bit of programming or having to know a little bit of how it works, in this empty tool, you have navigation infrastructure, you have the hotspot functionality, you have the implementation of the riddles, objects, inventories, and so on. So if you want to build something like this, no programming skills are needed. You still have to have the creativity. You still have to have the guts, the content of the room. What do you want your students to learn? And this development of the empty tool is part of the project I mentioned in the beginning, which is funded by Erasmus+. It's a cooperation of 3 universities, Philips University of Marburg, UiA, and Comenius University in Bratislava in Slovakia. And we try to develop onboarding games to help pupils become students. The project is called Games and Active Learning Methods in Education. And the idea is to help students who come from high school and are very often insecure, very dependent on the teacher guidance, to become independent learners and get to know the university, get to know our facilities, and start being students. So we use both escape rooms and other small games. And if you remember the talk Andreas gave yesterday, we can think about this as one of the mini games, how to be a successful student. It's not their entire life, but there are some skills that they need to learn to succeed at their studies. So these games could be one part of the successful student mini game. And as my last point, as part of the project, next January, will be the end of the project, we'll organize a conference and a PhD course here at UiA, but on the other campus, about games and learning. So if any of you have some ideas about the research that's connected not necessarily to esports, but how gaming, esport, anything facilitates learning, or if you have perhaps PhD students interested in that, there will be a conference and the call will come out shortly. So thank you, and now it's time for questions.